Today, we are film analyzing a very deep topic movie. So trigger warning, drug use, overdosing, just be warned. Welcome back to the YouTube channel, guys. Today we are going to be analyzing Beautiful Boy, director Felix van Groningen, that's how we're going to say it, and the screenwriter is Felix, the director, and Luke Davies. So right off the bat, the quality is wonderful. The sound, camera, and dialogue delivery is all just right there where I wanted it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It was honestly perfect.
And
everything combined already made me feel inclined.
It's about my son.
The mood is so there. The set is gorgeous. I loved the time jump and the lighting. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. It was dark but well lit. And the set of the house is beautiful and very homey. The photos on the wall are well done. It shows him so young and innocent, and just how their family was in the past, and we'll see why that's important. The call scene is wonderful where he's trying to find Nick. The lighting again is so beautiful and so natural. I really adore the lighting in this movie. The casting for young Nick was wonderful. I really couldn't have imagined a better young Nick. It really had the facial features of Timothy, and we all know those are hard to kind of combat. The window glare was beautiful. The camera movement, oh my god. It was just so natural. And the sound was as well. Something that's really hard to master is camera movement looking natural, because everybody always has a little bit of shake to them. Like if you're using a camera, it's shaking, but this was so smooth. It panned evenly, smooth. It was beautiful. The overlook of the field, I loved it. I don't want to say the lighting, because that might make it seem fake, because the sun is the light, but it was all done very well. The car angles are intricate and gorgeous. I loved the looking at him and then back to Nick, and then even in the rear view mirror, and then outside of the car. I loved it. The dialogue delivery is realistic and smooth. This is something that's throughout the whole movie. They really knew how to nail the dialogue, making it seem so natural and realistic. And it really, no matter what they're saying, it always holds so much emotion. Even though such a simple note, the costumes are beautiful throughout this whole movie. They're not really that intricate, which for a movie set in the modern time, I find really easy to do, but it can, if you really think about it, be difficult because you're not trying to overdress a character. And when you think about movies and costumes, one movie that comes to mind where that was such a big issue was It Ends With Us. Everybody was so worried about the costume designs because they didn't really fit the character, but the costumes are really what makes the character's personality, because you see what they wear on a daily basis, you see their style, you see what sometimes reflects how they're feeling inside, because clothing can sometimes reveal someone's inner thoughts. Like if someone's going through a depressive episode, they could be more slouchy, they could be more in baggy clothing. Not to stereotype or anything, but those are just some things that you could use to reflect costume design. The office set is gorgeous. Throughout the whole movie, all the sets are beautiful, but the office set just really kind of pulled that office-y kind of feel to it. Despite no dialogue, you can tell his feelings and thoughts. Now, with a movie so emotional like this one, being able to tell the emotions that someone is feeling without them directly expressing it is so important, because you can't just constantly be talking about how you're feeling. You have to show that on your face, or else the movie will just become repetitive, because these thoughts and emotions are repetitive throughout the entire movie, and knowing that he is thinking them without him directly saying them, it's so important and so wonderful. The cuts between memories is wonderful and smooth. This is once again a very important thing, because it gives you the chance to see how people once were and how they are now and how different it is, and it all brings it together in such a heartbreaking way. The hug shows so much emotion because you can tell that
he's made great progress.
He needs help. You can tell he's struggling really bad right now, and it expressed that so much, especially with the context of the scene before and after. The leaves falling on the car, it was a small detail, but it was wonderful. The sound again is so real and wonderful. I can't really remember if I put this down, and there were multiple times in my notes, but it's definitely something that goes throughout the entire movie. The sound is wonderful. The phone call about Nick missing, oh my god, I was getting so angry with the dad. Like, why were you making it such, like, not a big deal? Like, his emotion, I felt it so much that I was getting that emotion too, and the acting was just so done wonderfully. And you know, it's really good if you feel angry with them. The time jumps with the music was brilliant, and especially in such a heart-racing scene like this one, the loud music really showed how important those time skips were and what they were feeling. Because, you know, one scene with drugs and then the other where it's going escalating, really using the music to escalate the feelings in the viewer was brilliant. The rain was beautiful and showed so much sadness. Rain can typically be used to show sadness, but it's not always used like that. It can sometimes show desperation, but in this case, it was to show sadness, and it did. The time comparisons was so heart-gripping, especially with the joint. I mean, that's what I was saying before, like, they're using the joint to connect to his now escalated drug problems, and I find that really important. The emotions in the discussion about the drugs is
the story has to be bigger than that, right?
just beautiful.
There's more to it.
The tears welling up in Nick's eyes,
We need to know.
and the silence in the room. You could feel a pin drop. That's how tense the moment was. And I found that so realistic, because I've had several conversations where it's like this in the room. Or even if there's silence around, you can still
And you've been doing all
feel
of
the
that
tension
for
throughout the conversation.
a couple of years, yeah.
But what was so important about this was just it got silent,
And crystal meth?
because no one knew what to say
A couple months.
to fill in those gaps. It was
Why?
such a serious topic, and the silence was so important.
Or no.
And the emotions trying to pull out of Nick. It was beautiful. However, controversial take, I feel like this scene would have been better if the mom was not there. Now, I'm all for both parents being involved and their child's mental health issues, their drug issues in this scenario. But I feel like it would have been better if she wasn't there, because she was just sitting there. But on a more positive take of this, that showed that she was really distant as a mom. She didn't really know how to talk to him, to comfort him, to get answers out of him, while the dad did know. That's why he was the only one talking. So even though this was a con to it, I would have rathered her not be there. I'm glad she was, because it showed that distance in the relationship and how close the father and Nick were. I really do love the flashback scenes. It shows their bond so well. And in a movie so deep and dark like this, the bond really needed to pull through to show how desperate he was to find solution to this problem. When they're at the beach, the water going over the camera, I love that so much. It really immersed you into the moment and made you feel like you were drowning with him. Because at that moment, even though he wasn't drowning in the end, the dad thought he was. And that's why the water on the camera was so important, because it immersed you into his panic. The college dorm room set, and like even outside of the dorm, it was all gorgeous. It was beautiful and realistic. I loved it. The pacing of the scenes is wonderfully done. It's like that throughout the entire movie, but specifically in this scene, it was wonderful. Reading the poem of the clips over the family, I really found that to be beautiful, because not only it showed him actually getting a positive side to this issue, but it showed them progressing through their family, even though there's this huge stressor in their life. The evil, dark music while looking at the drawings and writings was so genius. It really showed how dark they were, and that the dad didn't really expect this from his son, especially even though he was a drawing and writing kid. These weren't the drawings the dad had seen before, and it really showed concern and escalating in the whole situation. The cutback to the beginning scene was fantastic. We now know what is going on, and it makes so much more meaningful for the conversation scene going in at the beginning, because we now have an explanation as to why he's asking these questions, why he needs to know, and why it's so personal to him, instead of being for his magazine like the doctor said. While the doctor was explaining, the cuts back to him talking to another meth user, and the doctor explaining the symptoms while we were witnessing some of them. It really just explained it well, and it showed how desperate the dad was for answers and help. And the cuts back and forth were done very well. They were smooth, and they really fit really well. Like, they weren't just there. The scene of him trying the meth, it made me really fearful and sad, because what if he got addicted to it like his son is? But it also made me sad, because he's really desperate for answers, and he's wondering, why is my son so involved in this? He wants to know what is making him so interested in it, and the feeling of efficacy that he's feeling. Is it really there, and is that what's pulling him in? The scene in the diner almost made me cry. The flashbacks, the lighting differences, oh my god. And then the hug after. You could really tell just from the lighting differences alone that it was two different contexts of the diner, and it was the same diner. So I find the lighting differences to be the main teller of the two different emotions going on in the diner scenes. Him hesitant to give him the money and Nick persisting shows how bad it has gotten. The addiction, the anger and guilt tripping him from Nick is awful. But the dialogue delivery, it was so realistic. The whole scene was perfect. The quick cut scenes show time change beautifully. It's kind of like hitting a fast forward button on a movie, but incorporate that into the actual movie. I loved it. The sound being muffled shows how disconnected he really is when he redoes it. Even if it was just the pills and not the crystal meth again, it really just showed how him getting back into it after being clean for so long really just disconnected him from everything. And I loved how it was just focused on Nick instead of everybody going around, and him still talking and trying to seem coherent and in the moment. I loved it. The sound represented the dad's heartbeat, and I find that very genius because it's not like you can obviously hear the dad's heartbeat, but you know that that fast-paced music is definitely his heart racing right now. The singing was making me sob. Cut back to the dad and Nick in the hotel room, and then young Nick and the dad singing to him while comforting him to go to sleep. Beautiful, 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 beautiful boy. And when I saw the title, that's the only song I could think of. And the fact that they sang it in the movie, oh my god, heart-wrenching. The dialogue delivery was so meaningful and real during the airport scene when Nick was going to fly to LA to see his mom. He didn't want to go. And again, that shows how distant they are and how disconnected they are as mother and son. And then Nick actually flying to go stay with his mom. I loved the connection between the two clips. When Nick was hugging his mom, the gestures, her putting her arm around him, everything. It was all perfect. The biking clips with the sponsor are gorgeous. I loved the scenery, I loved the lighting, the camera movements. They kept up with the biking really well. I really loved that. The sound in the auditorium was realistic. I loved it. The car driving scene was beautifully done. I loved him putting his hand out the window, even at one point sticking his head out the window. Seeing him play with the kids again, it was so heartwarming. And then it also comes back later on. The kid saying, "You're just the same old Nick," and his facial expression clearly showed that meant so much to him. And that's what he's needed to hear all along, because if you cut back a couple scenes or a lot of scenes ago, he was like, "You don't like this Nick now? You don't like how I am now?" In the diner scene. So him hearing the kid say, "You're just the same," it probably affected him a lot. The call with his sponsor really showed how bad it's getting. The frustration in his voice, sadness, you can all tell it's all overwhelming him. That's why he called his sponsor. But then the frustration coming in through the end, and he hangs up on his sponsor. This whole scene was heartbreaking. You can tell he's hesitant about getting back and doing it again. But the feeling of that addiction, it overruled all of that. And this whole scene is really just heartbreaking. The lighting, him getting the girl into it, that's the same girl from college, and the music, it was heartbreaking, but it was well done. The water in the shower, it was pairing so gorgeously with the steam and the lighting. It really made the high feel incorporated into the scene, and I loved it. Him crying about the events that happened last night the next morning, I felt my heart shatter for him. It was awful, but so well done. The argument with the stepmom and dad, it really shows the tension in the family finally breaking because of all the stress going on. I'm glad they showed that. Sunrise, sunset, it was so meaningful for the scene because is this the little girl I carried? Is this the little boy at play? Cutting to his little son. I don't remember growing older. When did they? It was beautiful. The silence of the house when Nick shows up and the phone rings is so deafening. It was empty. You could feel he had no real connection to the house in that moment. He was just there to get business done. Seeing the father's writing was such a beautiful moment. I'm so glad we got to see what he wrote, even if it was just a little bit. I'm assuming it was an article for a newspaper, or not a newspaper, a magazine, like a memoir of his experience with his son and drugs. It was a wonderful detail. After Nick gets caught, they run, they get in the car, they drive past the dad, they drive past the stepmom. But the stepmom ran and got in her car and drove after them. Oh my god. It was so cinematically done. Her crying, the music, the cuts back and forth from him to her. Perfect. Perfect. And it really pulls at your heart because you know that was her last hope to getting him back. And he just continued running. The girl overdosing, it was so terrifying. You could see all the emotion in the car with the lighting, with the sound. It was so silent. And then him calling 911. He was just so desperate to keep doing CPR that he couldn't really focus on the phone call with 911. And his heart was racing. He was scared. And the only thing he needed to do was CPR, keep doing it, and then she got up, and then it cuts to the cops interrogating her. Nick calling his dad, being like, I need to come home. That's the only thing I need right now. I don't need to go to no rehab. I just need to come home. The lighting for Nick was so dark, but the lighting for the dad was a little bit brighter. And that was a very important detail. You can tell with the dad breaking down right after the phone call that it was so hard for him to deny him. It was so hard for him to deny Nick. But he knew, he's accepted that he can't help or fix Nick. Nick has to be the one to do it. The first thought I had when Nick was standing with the city lights in front of him was that he was going to commit. It's such an awful thought, but I feel like that's what they were trying to hint with that he was considering it. The following clips make you think about closure, especially with the music and sunlight, the beach and everything. But the music gets darker, and it cuts to the mom. The phone call, it was grieving, hopelessness, and giving up.
He sounds desperate.
They were all terrified, and they didn't know what to do.
He's gonna die even.
And the dad's just taking a step back, giving up. Them not showing what Nick is writing, and then the lady's story playing in the background of her friend overdosing and dying, it really felt like foreshadowing, and I felt fear overcome me for Nick. In the bathroom when he's doing the drugs, the makeup on his veins, as bad as it sounds, they were done perfectly. It really looked real. The music when he's doing the drugs and overdosing was showing ecstasy, release, but also pain. And finally, the outdoor scene. Nick crying, but the dad doesn't cry. It shows numbness from the dad, but care, and from Nick, vulnerability. With that one short ending scene, you felt hope and strength coming from both of them, but we're left with no closure. We don't know whether or not he got help, if the cycle kept going through or not, whether or not he got better, if that strength that we feel so strongly from that scene sticks. But we all have hope. Overall, this movie was beautiful. It had amazing dialogue delivery, lighting, sound. I really couldn't have thought of a more cinematic masterpiece to tell Nick's story. It was all done wonderfully, and it was beautiful. The whole movie was fantastic. I loved it. Thank you all so much for watching. Try and guess what the next film analysis is going to be in the comments below, and hit the subscribe button, and go follow my Instagram for updates on Love That Seems Quiet and just things going on with the YouTube channel. Alright, I'll see you next video.